my opinion is that the person with bothersome tinnitus, there's nothing broken, there's nothing to fix exactly. It definitely involves a shift in perception and a shift in thinking and a shift in maybe certain parts of the personality that I think contribute to bothersome tinnitus.
I would disagree in this conversation. Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Pure Tinnitus and Hearing podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Jennifer Gans, who is a psychologist in California. I first met Dr. Gans about 4 years ago when she presented to my class of audiology graduate students. So to have her back today, her second time appearing with Pure Tinnitus, is a great honor. In today's talk, we're going to work on this topic of, is waiting for a cure helping you? We're going to get into the personality of the average person with tinnitus and then describe the results of a new study that Dr. Gans put together about mindfulness tinnitus and how it affected about 100 people during COVID. Dr. Gans, how are you doing today? Tell us who you are and what you do for the tinnitus community.
Oh, it's good to be here and talking about my favorite topic lately. So, especially during the time of COVID, when it's almost as if the volume of tinnitus has been turned up like the volume on a stereo. But, as you mentioned, I, both in my private practice and also through the mindfultinnitusrelief.com course, have been working, for now thousands and thousands of hours with people that are struggling with bothersome tinnitus. And,
Yeah, we're grateful that you chose to specialize in tinnitus. Being an audiologist myself, it's an incredible asset to have someone like yourself, to have you, a psychologist dedicated to tinnitus. It's an incredible asset for us. So thank you. Let's talk about the cure for tinnitus. Some are waiting for it. There's a lot of research and funding going into it from different groups, whether that's the veterans, different biotech researchers. What do you think? Is it worth waiting for a cure? You wanted to talk about this. I would think this is great for our audience to get into. So take the floor on this. What do you think?
yeah, this is a very, very important topic because when something goes wrong or something doesn't feel right in our bodies, we tend to go to a medical professional and we want answers. You walk into the doctor's office and you want a pill, a surgery, some sort of procedure to make whatever's bothersome go away. And tinnitus is time and time again, I talk with patients that have come from their doctor who have just kind of shrugged their shoulders, looked at them and said, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. Go home and live with it. And so that's the kiss of death for somebody with tinnitus. But so, yeah, I also am a very big believer that, to help with anything that's going on with us, it's usually more than one thing that we need to do in order to help ourselves. So, the approach that I have taken through the mindfulness door, through the using meditation to shift the brain and then to help with habituation to tinnitus, uh, is a lot because we have no, we've done research and research and research for decades now and really haven't come up with, again, that pill, that procedure, or um, what is satisfactory as a cure. But my argument is, especially with tinnitus, that actually nothing's broken. And so it's a very unique thing that we go to our doctors with. And doctors are trained to know and they're trained to fix things. And so when somebody comes into their office and they can't fix what's going on or they can't cure what's going on, the doctor becomes anxious, and then the person with the tinnitus is kind of left feeling unsupported or uncared for. So my opinion is that the person with bothersome tinnitus, there's nothing broken, there's nothing to fix exactly. It definitely involves a shift in perception and a shift in thinking and a shift in maybe certain parts of the personality that I think contribute to bothersome tinnitus. But so as it stands right now, we don't have any quote unquote cure, but there's many, many different things that we can be doing to help ourselves. Sound sensitivity, amplification, certainly a mindfulness approach. And so my argument is, if we can shift tinnitus from the bothersome category into the non-bothersome category, well, then isn't that a cure? So 50 million Americans, that's the number that gets thrown out, and that's just in the United States here. 50 million Americans experience tinnitus, but about 16 to 17 million, and then I think about 16 to 17 million actually go to their doctor and they say, "Oh, what is this?" And so then we have another 2 to 3 million that are so bothered by it, but that they can't function. And so we have about 20 million Americans that are walking around the streets with tinnitus, but they're not bothered by it. And so here we have two groups. We have the group that's bothered and some severely bothered by tinnitus, and those who have tinnitus but they're not bothered by it. And so, in light of the fact that there is no cure, no pill yet, I mean, and I also open this up to researchers. I mean, maybe in the future there will be that pill or that procedure. I mean, I have my opinions about why there might not be, but um, I'm. But right now, there's no cure, and so my work is not. I'm not putting my energy towards curing tinnitus, but I am putting a lot of my energy, or all of it, to helping individuals shift their tinnitus from the bothersome to the non-bothersome category. Because, like I said before, if you're walking the streets of the United States here with tinnitus and it doesn't bother you, then so what? And so that's more the approach that I'm taking now. I mean, again, who knows in the future? There's amazing researchers out there that are putting a lot of effort towards finding, uh, you know, a cure as it's naturally defined. But my opinion is right now there's no cure. So let's work with what we have, and we have something pretty amazing. Because again, I'm going to emphasize this throughout the entire talk here, is if you have tinnitus and it doesn't bother you, then so what? So
Yeah. All right. So my 2 cents on this. Let's get into this because we can have a nice discussion. So this this argument or this idea that is shifting bothersome tinnitus to non-bothersome tinnitus, is that good enough for to be considered a cure, right? I would disagree in this conversation, and I would, and from my experience going very deep into the auditory domain as an audiologist, what I found is that this psychological framing aspect of bad, neutral, good, wherever we fall on that spectrum, that is probably the most important out of all this. But underlying that, there are these baseline loudness levels of tinnitus, and those who have much louder tinnitus uh, have a disproportionate are disproportionately, I would say, from my experience talking to people, those who have disproportionately louder tinnitus uh, are the ones who are bothered by it more. And that may just be the people who are coming to see me. Um, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when I think about, I'm happy we can have this discussion because it's really important to bring in all sides of this. That my thought was a condition like dizziness, where, for example, this is the first thing that came to mind. Dramamine helps dizziness, but it doesn't cure it, but it does help the symptom of dizziness. So that is a pharmaceutical solution to help with dizziness, but it doesn't cure it. So if there was something directly that impacted the auditory system like that for tinnitus, would that be good enough to be labeled a cure pharmaceutically? I'm not sure. But silence is essentially non-existent. Very few people have no tinnitus ever. So my perspective is that if there was some sort of pharmaceutical or surgical route that could reduce the loudness of someone's tinnitus, that would change the world. Um, Thoughts on this sort of back and forth?
yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I love this conversation. All right, so let me just kind of peel away some of the things that you were mentioning here. First of all, they actually haven't in the research found a correlation between loudness and bother. Okay, Jastroboff years ago was curious about that. He's like, well, surely, somebody with loud tinnitus must be much more impacted by their tinnitus than somebody with subjectively less loud tinnitus. And so he did a study, and what he found in his study was that actually tinnitus loudness did not determine the bother that the person was experiencing, which again speaks to the psychology that is behind tinnitus and our perception of unpleasant. You talk about good, bad, I talk about unpleasant, pleasant, and neutral as being kind of the three states that, I mean, that's obviously very simplistic, but the three states that we can be in with any body sensation. So first off, yes, it would seem, but they in the research have not found that that's actually the case. So then the second thing that you're talking about is, or that you mentioned that I'd love to address is, again, I mentioned that yes, someday there may be a cure, if but aren't we looking for relief? Okay, and so I think that a cure, for maybe um, by technical purposes, yeah, it would be fun to find out what is going on in the brain. Although I think we do know what's going on in the brain, to turn off tinnitus. Really, what we're looking for is quality of life. Okay, so cure, again, like I always say to people, if you want to know the temperature outside, you're not going to take a ruler, even though a ruler is a form of measurement. You're not going to go outside and, test the temperature with that. And so we have to be very careful with the words we use because semantics matter. Okay. How we talk about tinnitus can also be, as I talk about in my work, also be kind of creating a story that gets wrapped around the tinnitus that is the problem because tinnitus is a benign body sensation that the brain has misunderstood as something important to pay attention to. So, what I'm finding in my work is that, here's tinnitus, but the story and the semantics that get wrapped around the tinnitus are actually what the problem is. And so, if we can unravel that and allow the brain to do what the brain naturally does, which is habituate to benign body sensations, we then find that we are able to shift our experience of tinnitus from the bothersome to the non bothersome category. So, again, I think we're talking semantics.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, is it a cure? Well, do I ever say to somebody that many of the people I work with actually will have and do have tinnitus for the rest of their lives, but they're not bothered by it. And if you think about it, we have umpteen number of body sensations in our lives that are not pleasant, but we habituate to them. Okay. And so tinnitus can be somewhat put into that category in that, we don't always, get to choose what body sensations that we're going to experience. But if we cannot be bothered by it, then my opinion is, and so who cares? And so I guess what I'm saying is that I'm seeing through my work, through the program that I developed and elsewhere, I mean, throughout the world, that there are people that are habituating to tinnitus, that they are shifting, they're able to take this tinnitus that's front and center in their lives and put it in the background where it deserves to be, just by shifting their perspective on the tinnitus. And that can be where they place their attention, that can be um, how they understand, what tinnitus is and what it isn't, and the like. But
Absolutely agree. And I'm with you. My approaches to managing tinnitus are very in line with yours. And in terms of someone putting out the idea of a cure, pharmaceutical, surgical remedy to help tinnitus, it can be all or nothing thinking. And that's one lesson to take away from this is that even if there is a cure for hearing loss, and that's being researched simultaneously with tinnitus, is that it's unlikely for it to be completely restored. It's more of a game of marginal improvement. So this psychological route of mindfulness or CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or other forms of mind body practices like meditation, etc., that is the easiest, the most attainable marginal improvement for tinnitus in these times. So tell us more about what else you're working on. And we wanted to also bring up in this talk the personality of the standard tinnitus patient that you encounter, as well as the research that you recently completed. So Tell us about the personality of the average person who comes to you who has tinnitus.
Okay, so that's a great question. So for for again the thousands of hours that I've worked with people with tinnitus, I've started to notice things, and there's usually actually not even usually. I would say pretty much all of the time there's something wonderful about the person with tinnitus that is also what's creating the problem, so to speak. Okay, so let me explain what I mean. So I frame this personality or these aspects of this personality is incredibly positive. Okay, because usually the things that are both the things that are making tinnitus front and center are also the things that make a person very successful in, especially in our culture. And so without further ado, I'll mention what some of those qualities are. So the person that comes to me, the person that I work with, usually always has these qualities about them of having an attention to detail. They tend to be a person who sees a problem, latches onto that problem, and doesn't let go of that problem until it's understood or resolved or fixed. So the person with tinnitus tends to be intense. They are, I don't mean this in a diagnostic way, but they tend to have almost like an obsessive compulsive quality to the way they approach problems in their lives. Okay. So this is the personality that, this is also something, wonderful. I mean, everybody wants somebody in their lives that spots a problem, latches onto it, and won't stop thinking about it until they figure it out. I mean, these are wonderful qualities in a sense. But the problem is the same quality used towards tinnitus is always going to end in a dead end. So this is what I'm seeing with patients that we have with tinnitus. And so, for a number of reasons that we've already talked about, and also reasons that, well, for many reasons, bringing a mindfulness meditation approach to tinnitus is also something that can help us create some space between us and anything that's happening in our environment, whether it be tinnitus or COVID or any other stressor in our environment. It helps us to get a little bit more space from it so that instead of reacting to our events in life, we're able to respond to our events in life. And so that could be the kind of the gate that opens the door to the habituation process for many people. And so I think that's why CBT and mindfulness has gotten such amazing results in research. And I'll talk about the study that I just completed that I think would be interesting to discuss a little bit more. So this ability to have a little bit more space in our lives helps us to choose how we're going to respond to tinnitus. So in my private practice, and certainly in the course that I designed, mindfultinnitusrelief.com, there's really I often say this is my special sauce in the first session that I meet with people. My goal is to make a person less anxious about tinnitus, make them an expert in what tinnitus is and what it isn't, and then based on what their lifestyle and choices are, find a management plan that works for them individually. So I developed this course called Mindfulness-Based Tinnitus Stress Reduction, which is, sounds an awful lot like the program that John Kabat-Zinn came up with, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, and it is. But what I've done is I've taken his principles, this 8-week course, and I have made it 100% specific to the person who is struggling with bothersome tinnitus. So the name Mindfulness-Based Tinnitus Stress Reduction was born. That was the research that I did at UCSF was started in about 2013. And we found amazing results. And so what I've done since that time is I've flipped it into an online course. So what we have now is an 8-week online course where people can both learn as the things that I mentioned, with videos and audio recordings and a lot of written material and activities, become an expert in what tinnitus is and what it isn't, become less anxious about their tinnitus, but then also in the 8 weeks, it creates a skill set in how to begin a mindfulness meditation practice. That again is, I don't know that if time allows for our talk today, but uh, meditation and mindfulness meditation specifically in the research has shown that it strengthens or builds uh, uh, tissue in the prefrontal cortex, which is our reasoning, our ability to place our attention where we choose it to go, our ability to modulate our fear and our emotions in general, and basically all the executive functioning that we wish that our young kids could develop quickly. But so a meditation practice helps to strengthen this area, but also quell or calm down the amygdala, which is the area of the brain that triggers our fight or flight response, our fear center, so to speak. And so the program, in I guess you could say behind the scenes, is also very interested in helping somebody use knowledge to chill out a subconscious part of their brain that is reacting to tinnitus rather than responding to it for what it is, which is a benign body sensation that the brain has misunderstood as important to pay attention to. So, moving along, this online course, again, with the in-person course, we were seeing amazing results and did some research with that at UCSF. So now it's time to look and see what the data tells us about this 8-week online course. And so during, I guess it was March 25th, I decided to make the course free for anybody across the world. So this, it being, an internet-based or an online course, it has the reach across the world. And so I made the course free for anybody during the shelter in place period between March 25th and June 9th, I believe, or June 8th or June 9th. Anybody across the world was allowed to sign up for the course for free. And so luckily we had as many as, I think it was 677 people signing up for the course worldwide and taking the pre-assessment. And so the results that we got from this, we really observed a large sample size of 677. And we measured these people at pre, at mid, at about 3 weeks into the course, and then at the end at 8 weeks. And then we're now finishing up gathering the data of a 6-month follow-up to see if the results of the course were enduring. And so we found very significant results between the people that started the course. The results went down significantly. We use the Tinnitus Functional Index and Perceived Stress Scale as our measures to show tinnitus impact and perceived stress. So what we found is there was a significant drop in people's experience of tinnitus distress and perceived stress, even at mid-course. So we're not talking, 3 months, 3 years. We're talking 3 weeks into taking this course. We're seeing people making significant shifts in their tinnitus from bothersome to non-bothersome. And then we looked at the post-assessment, which is just 8 weeks later, and we were seeing an even further drop. And then at 6 months, we found that of the people that were involved, that they were maintaining their significant lower scores on the Tinnitus Functional Index and Perceived Stress Scale. So I'm very excited about these results because it's really showing the efficacy and the effectiveness of healing from home. And this was particularly interesting during the time of COVID because, we're all realizing that, we risk, even leaving the house, to go to see a doctor. We need to find a way to heal from home. And I think that what people are finding with tinnitus is that the responsibility has to be on the person with the tinnitus rather than the clinician that's caring for them. They obviously are a guide, but ultimately, when a person takes the responsibility of their tinnitus into their own hands and starts to help themselves by changing their perspective on tinnitus and respond to tinnitus rather than reacting to tinnitus, it really opens up the floodgates and allows the brain to do what the brain naturally knows how to do, which is habituate. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of where we are with this. And certainly happy to share the results. It's now in press, but will be coming out in a journal soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, anyone who's watching or listening, consider checking this out. I practice meditation myself. I can certainly recommend it personally. I've created meditations for those with tinnitus myself as well, and I've gotten great feedback. So, this course is a structured way to consider taking meditation as a tool to help with those cognitive parts that are potentially blocking someone getting better, as well as getting out of the head and relaxing into the body, the healthy parasympathetic nervous system, which we love and we talk about a lot here at Pure Tinnitus. Jennifer, would you like to share the slide for those of us watching live? Would you like to talk more about that, or did you cover everything you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, you're more than welcome to look at this slide, or let's put it up.
Okay, great. Please go ahead and put that up for those watching the video, and I will explain just a bit. I will be the host here, just explaining that Dr. Gans created mindfulness tinnitus relief.com, and she's here to just share some of the data from that recent study which had hundreds of individuals sign up during the free period during COVID. And then we're going to see how many people completed it and what they learned. So, Dr. Gans, take the floor.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be running through the slides so quickly here. Time never allows for as much as I have to say, but here's just a quick and dirty. We see here uh, the green here that you see are the people that came to the course to take the pre-assessment, and we're seeing here in the yellow people at mid, uh, you know, at um, at mid course, just 3 weeks into completion of 3 weeks of the course. We're seeing a significant drop in their tinnitus bother, and then or tinnitus distress and perceived stress. And then at the end of the course, at 8 weeks, we're seeing an even further significant drop. And the 6 month, or so yes, the 6 month follow up data uh, shows maintained results, but I don't have a bar for that quite yet because the results are just in now. But I'm looking forward to kind of completing this slide with some of our 6 month data showing the efficacy. And so uh, yeah, so there we have it. And so the online course, I talk about meditation. If I may, it's kind of a way of tuning our orchestra. The brain is like an orchestra, and like we had started out saying, tinnitus is a benign body sensation, and so there's really nothing broken. And so if we can allow the brain to relax, I often say that stress increases tinnitus bother and relaxation decreases tinnitus bother. So basically, when you're looking for something to help you with tinnitus, if um, if it stresses you out, your tinnitus is going to be more bothersome. If it relaxes you, your tinnitus will be less bothersome. And so I think about a symphony, and there's never been a conductor that's gotten up in front of their symphony and just started playing. They always get up there and they tune the instruments. And so what a meditation program or practice helps us with is to make sure that all parts of our brain are in symphony, are in playing at least in the same key, so that we can begin to create that space that I talked about before, so that we can start choosing to respond to tinnitus rather than react. And I'm happy to say that the numbers are showing this. This is what that we're finding in the research. So, as far as, where the future lies, there's definitely going to be a lot more research into this area. And that what I hope for people, until the cure comes, until that pill or that surgery comes, in whatever form it will come, right now, helping yourself to shift tinnitus from bothersome to non bothersome, and to be able to walk this earth with more comfort, with more ease, should actually be the primary thing here. Because again, tinnitus is a benign body sensation. We're not talking about cancer. We're not talking about uh, ulcers and other stress related phenomenon. We're talking about tinnitus, which luckily is benign. And so if we can allow it to just go into the background where it belongs, then I don't know, that to me is a bit of a cure. So
It's definitely a win. It's definitely progress. It's definitely
mhm.
worth energy to get to that result. And it usually doesn't happen by itself. So this program you're explaining here, your program, certainly a great resource. And it, to me, it, it represents a Western medical program or modality that's based in Eastern tradition. And in my personal journey, I connect with that very much, of simple practice like meditation performed consistently, along with changing the mindset of different psychological aspects, can really affect being present. It can reduce anxiety, stress, and increase a sense of purpose and presence. So thank you for all this work and the years of research that you've done leading up to this point. Where can someone find you if they're looking to learn more about your course or to work with you one-on-one?
Yeah, well, it's easy these days. Simply go to mindfultinnitusrelief.com and you'll be right there with the course, and you can look at the introduction and look at some of the resources and make a decision if this is a good program for you. And I am working in individual therapy now because of COVID. Of course, I'm working through Zoom, so I can work with individually with people in California because that's where I'm licensed. If you're needing some help in this area, I really encourage you to go to the mindfultinnitusrelief.com course and see what you can do from healing from home now.
Thank you. Healing from home. That's a nice little slogan. I like that. Well, Dr. Gans, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. This has been episode 14 of the Pure Tinnitus and Hearing podcast. And you are the first psychologist that has come on for the podcast. Thank you for that. Thank you for your generosity. And on behalf of anyone who has used meditation to help with their tinnitus, thank you for being a pillar in that community.